Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're jumping right into some fascinating research from Dr. Sudhindra S.G. We're going to be talking about one of the trickiest parts of being a teacher, really understanding student personality. We'll lay out a practical way for you to think about the psychology of the adolescents in your high school and pre-university classrooms. So let's get right to it. Every single day, you walk into a classroom that's just brimming with these unique, complex individuals. It's so much more than just grades and attendance, right? You've got the quiet artist in the back, the natural leader up front, the student who's an anxious perfectionist. What is really driving them? That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together today. You know, trying to figure out personality isn't new. Humans have been at this for literally centuries. The ancient Greeks thought it all came down to a balance of fluids in your body. Others looked to the 5 elements or different mind-body principles. And then, of course, you have Sigmund Freud, who saw our personality as this constant, dramatic battle going on deep inside our own minds. But here's the thing about all those early ideas. They were insightful, for sure, but they had a big problem. How do you actually measure something like black bile? Or how do you get real data from an ink blot? This lack of a solid scientific standard is what really pushed psychologists in the 20th century to find a more empirical, data-driven way to understand who we are. And that search for a new approach, well, it led to this huge turning point in psychology. And it was all sparked by a legendary and kind of awkward encounter between a young psychologist and Sigmund Freud himself. So, this young psychologist was named Gordon Allport, and his idea was pretty different from Freud's. While Freud was digging deep into the past, looking for hidden, unconscious reasons for everything, Allport thought, hey, maybe we should just look at the stable, conscious motivations that guide people right now. It sounds simple, but it was a revolutionary shift in thinking. The story is just fantastic. Allport is in a meeting with Freud, and he tells a little story about a boy he saw on a train who was obsessed at being clean. After he finishes, Freud just leans in and asks, and was that little boy you? Allport was floored. He realized in that moment that Freud wasn't trying to understand the boy's behavior. He was trying to explain it away by digging for some hidden motive in Allport's own past. And that became Allport's whole thing. Let's focus on describing the traits we can actually see. First, for teachers, it's a great reminder that sometimes a clean desk is just a clean desk. Allport's work basically launched the whole field of what we now call trait theory, and it gives us the first really powerful tool for our teacher's toolkit, a framework that you probably heard of known as the Big Five. So after years and years of research, looking at thousands of words people use to describe each other, psychologists found something amazing. Most of our personality traits can be boiled down to 5 core dimensions. These aren't just random buckets. They represent the fundamental spectrums of human personality. And the easiest way to remember them is with the acronym OCEAN. Now here's the most important part. None of these are you have it or you don't kinds of things. They all exist on a spectrum. And this is where it gets really useful for you in the classroom. Think about your students right now. That super creative one who loves new ideas, probably high on openness. The student who never, ever misses a deadline, that's a classic sign of high conscientiousness. These aren't meant to be permanent labels, but they are great for helping us understand and even predict a student's general patterns of behavior. And I really want to stress that word average. These traits are great for predicting how a student will behave on average, but they are not destiny. Personality is pretty stable, but it's not set in stone. That student who is normally pretty shy and reserved, they might totally shine and give an incredible presentation if the environment feels safe and supportive. And that idea that our personality can flex brings us to the second part of our toolkit. So this brings us to our second big tool. And this one comes from what's called the social cognitive perspective. A psychologist named Albert Bandura was the big champion of this idea. And he argued that you just can't understand personality without looking at the powerful effect of the situation itself. Bandura came up with this term reciprocal determinism. It sounds a little academic, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's this constant feedback loop. Our personality traits make us choose certain environments, and then those very environments reinforce our personalities and shape how we act. Let's make that real. Imagine a student who's naturally a bit anxious. What do? Well, maybe they choose to read scary detective stories, or they hang out with friends who are also pretty cautious. Those choices, that environment, then feed back and reinforce their belief that, yeah, the world is a dangerous place, which of course just makes them more anxious. You see the loop? In a way, they are both the creators and the products of their own little world. This perspective also gives us another super useful concept, locus of control. And you see this every single day in the classroom. You've got the student with an internal locus of control. They believe they're in the driver's seat. A bad grade means, okay, I need to study harder. But then you have the student with an external locus of control. They feel like a passenger. A bad grade is because the test was unfair or the teacher doesn't like me. Knowing this can completely change how you give that student feedback. So how do we actually measure any of this? Well, as you can see here, different perspectives use totally different tools. Trait theorists love objective questionnaires, like the ones that measure the Big Five. But social cognitive theorists, they want to see personality in action, so they prefer to just observe how people behave in real-life situations. And then you've still got the psychodynamic folks using things like ink blots to try and get at those unconscious motives. There's no single best tool. It all depends on what you're trying to figure out. Okay, so all of these different theories, we've talked about treats, situations, even unconscious drives, they all eventually lead to one giant central question. What exactly is the self? What's at the very core of our personality? One really helpful way to think about this is the idea of our possible selves. Every single one of your students is walking around with an idea of their ideal self. You know, the successful, smart, happy person they dream of being. But they also have a feared self, the person they're terrified of becoming. And for adolescents, that powerful push and pull between these two visions, that is a massive motivator for almost everything they do. And this brings us right to the heart of Dr. Sudhindra S.G.'s research. The real takeaway is that no single theory is going to give you a complete picture of a student. It's not that simple. Instead, what we have is a toolkit. Trait theory gives us a great map of their general tendencies. Social cognitive theory reminds us that the classroom environment you create can literally change their behavior. By putting these ideas together, we get more than just a better understanding of our students. We get a crucial question to ask ourselves. Am I creating a classroom where the best version of each student's possible self has a real chance to emerge?